Okay, picture this. You're standing in a dry, dusty field. It's about 14,000 years ago, somewhere in what's now northern Jordan. The sun is punishing, and the plants around you, they look like nothing you'd ever call food. Thin, papery seeds on brittle stalks, hard as gravel, bitter. Bite into one raw and you'd probably crack a tooth. So there's no reason to look at this plant and think dinner. And yet, the people next to you are harvesting it, cutting the seed heads with sharp flint, bagging them up, hauling them back to camp so someone can spend hours cracking, pounding, grinding, and burning these tiny tasteless grains into something you can actually eat. Not because it's easy, because it's one of the hardest things they'll do all week. But that messy, tedious, multi-step process, turning a useless seed into food, that's the quiet beginning of the most important thing humans have ever made. So, how did we figure out bread? Here's the twist. Most of us learned it backwards. The story goes, we settled down, planted crops, then invented bread. Right? Well, the last 20 years of archaeology say, nope. Probably the other way around. Back in 2018, a researcher in Copenhagen published a paper that shook up the timeline. Her team dug up an ancient hunter-gatherer camp in the Jordanian desert. And inside 2 old stone fireplaces, they found charred crumbs. Under a microscope, those crumbs turned out to be bread. Flatbread, made from wild grains and ground-up plant roots. The date? Roughly 14,400 years ago. That's 4,000 years before anyone planted a single seed on purpose. Let that sink in. People with no farms, no fields, no silos, no permanent homes were making bread. And not by accident. It took at least 5 separate steps, each one needing its own tools and know-how. Nobody stumbles into that. That's a recipe, and it gets older. On the shore of the Sea of Galilee, scientists found a flat grinding stone with grain residue on it. That site? Around 23,000 years old. The Ice Age, mammoths still roaming around, and someone's already grinding wild grain into flour. Older still. In southern Italy, a grinding tool from about 32,000 years ago had traces of wild oats that were heated before grinding. Same tricks showed up all across Ice Age Europe. 30,000 years ago, humans were already processing grain. Now here's why any of this matters. Because it leads straight to why bread even exists. Raw grain? Nearly useless to your body. Those wild seeds are wrapped in a tough husk, and the starch inside is locked up tight. Eat it raw and you get almost nothing out of it. You'd basically be chewing wood, but crack that husk, grind it into powder, add heat, and boom, the starch changes. It becomes something your gut can finally absorb. The calories become real. So grinding and cooking grain isn't just cooking. It's a hack. It unlocks energy that was always trapped inside the seed. And here's the wild part. Compared to other apes, our guts are small. We traded gut size for brain size. Great deal if you can get enough calories. Raw plants won't cut it. But bread? Bread cracks the seed's armor, breaks down the starch, and later, fermentation even unlocks iron and zinc your body couldn't reach before. Your gut didn't evolve to eat grain. Bread is the tech that made grain edible anyway, and it's the perfect fuel. Flour, water, a hot stone, a few minutes, and you've got a food that's light, storable, and packed with energy. Try carrying raw meat, it rots. Fruit bruises. But bread? Bread is lightweight fuel. And for people always on the move, lightweight fuel means survival. Which brings us to the big question that's been haunting archaeologists. If bread came before farming, did bread cause farming? Think about it. Making bread from wild grain is brutal work, low yield, huge effort, but the product is amazing. Dense, storable, portable energy. And it looks like bread was a prestige food, something for feasts and rituals. Not your everyday snack. Enter Göbekli Tepe. This massive ritual site in Turkey, built by hunter-gatherers thousands of years before farming, shows signs of grain processing on a huge scale. The theory? To feed all those workers and worshippers, people needed a reliable grain supply, and that pressure, the hunger for bread and beer at big gatherings, may have pushed people to finally start planting seeds on purpose. So bread didn't follow farming. The craving for bread might have kicked farming into existence. And think about what that means. Cities, empires, writing, the entire world you're living in right now, all of it might trace back to people just wanting a steady supply of bread. Now, bread takes a fun turn. Somebody left their dough out too long, baked it anyway, and it puffed up. That's leavened bread. Best guess? It happened in ancient Egypt, when wild yeast floated onto some dough and started to ferment. The Egyptians didn't just get lucky, though. They mastered it. They had nearly 40 kinds of bread, flavored with dates, figs, honey. And bread was so important it was literally money. The workers who built the pyramids got paid in bread and beer, not gold. Bread. Oh, and here's a fun one. Bread and beer? Same invention. Both start with grain, grinding, water, and fermentation. Egyptians even baked bread, crumbled it into water, and let it ferment into beer. The bread was the starter for the beer. They were one big loop. Then came Rome, and Rome treated bread like politics. Ever heard bread in circuses? That's Rome. Keep the people fed and entertained, and you keep power. At their peak, hundreds of thousands of Romans got free grain every single month. Want proof? Go to Pompeii. When the volcano hit in 79 AD, it froze the city in ash, including over 30 bakeries, ovens, mills, and even actual loaves of bread, still sitting there 1,900 years later. Here's the kicker. Pompeii had one bakery for every 350 people. Modern New York? One for every 1,200. Roman Pompeii had more bakeries per person than Manhattan. Bread wasn't a side dish. It was the main event of an entire civilization. But here's something histories skip: the cost. Grinding grain by hand for hours, day after day, wrecked people's bodies. And it was mostly women doing it. Their skeletons show it. Damaged spines, worn-out toes, arm bones as dense as elite rowers. Every loaf was paid for with someone's body. And bread is everywhere in who we are. Corn tortillas, injera, naan, pita, arepas, roti, cultures that never met each other all landed on the same idea. Why? Because the problem's universal. Starchy plant, can't eat it raw. Grind it, wet it, heat it. Same physics, everywhere on Earth. Even our words remember. Companion comes from Latin for with bread. Someone you share bread with. Lord comes from an old word meaning loaf guardian. Lady? Loaf kneader. We've been carrying bread inside our language for over 1,000 years and barely noticed. And bread has toppled governments. In 1700s France, poor folks spent up to 88% of their wages just on bread. 88%! So when prices spiked and harvests failed, you didn't get a policy debate. You got a revolution. When the king couldn't feed his people, he couldn't rule. Even writing traces back to grain. The first writing system, cuneiform, wasn't invented for poetry. It was invented to count grain. The written word was literally born in a grain warehouse. So, how did humans invent bread? They didn't. Not in one place, not one moment, not one idea. Bread was invented over and over, independently, all across the world, by people who never heard of each other, because the chemistry demanded the same steps every time. Harvest, grind, add water, heat. The invention is baked right into the physics. But here's the part that stays with me. Bread is just ground seeds, water, and heat. 3 things. And from that, humans built agriculture, cities, empires, religions, writing, revolutions, the whole modern world. All of it, starting with someone kneeling on the ground, crushing wild seeds into powder, and pressing them onto a hot stone. They had no idea they were inventing civilization. They were just trying to eat. And tomorrow morning, you'll probably eat bread, toast, a sandwich, whatever. And you won't think about the 14,000-year chain of effort behind it. You'll just eat it. And honestly, that might be the most human thing about bread. It's so deep in everything we are, we forgot it was ever invented at all.